Physical vulnerabilities are definitely the most understated and misunderstood weakness in all networks, including the internet. I don't disparage the internet, but when I say things like the internet's a joke, I know I probably upset my friend John Savageau over there, who's been building internet networks for a long time. What I mean is that the concept that the internet saves everybody and the internet fixes itself isn't true. Ignorance to this can, has, and will continue to have an ever-increasing negative impact on global economy, stability, and peace if it's not addressed. And I put a couple of places and dates here at the bottom that happen to be related to undersea cables, which Joe's going to talk about, but it makes my point. And not that I could give you a historical reference of a carrier hotel or a major internet exchange peering point being demolished, but I don't want to have to wait until that time comes to have a slide for it. It's kind of what I'm getting at. And if that did happen, we probably, if depending on which building or buildings it was, we probably wouldn't be having a session like this for me to discuss it with people. So Luzon Strait is off the coast of Taiwan. In December of '06, there was a major earthquake. It wiped out multiple undersea cables in the span of 2 minutes, and it rendered useless the internet, voice networks, financial networks, everything in 2 minutes, and took entire countries offline for 2 months in Southeast Asia. And if it wasn't for John Savageau there and his NE2 exchange in One Wilshire, most of Asia would not have been restored when it was. As a matter of fact, most of Asia and Asian nations, particularly on the Pacific there, use One Wilshire in LA as their place to interconnect to each other. It's kind of interesting, but that point was proven by a natural occurring event, an earthquake. Middle East, February, March this year. So after I was giving presentations at PTC and all just passed in Hawaii about the Luzon cable cuts and how physical layer redundancy, diverse paths, layer 1, layer 2, interconnection redundancy is crucial and important. It was in 3-4 weeks after that that a series of undersea cables were cut in some fashion in the Persian Gulf, in the Mediterranean, and the Red Sea. It's debatable, and it's never been totally clarified. There was either 6, 7, or 8 cables that were cut. They were definitely cut. And for a period of about 2 to 3 weeks, UAE was rendered useless. Financial markets, communications, internet, voice, whatever. A huge piece of Egypt and a huge piece of Iran. Their connectivity capabilities were dramatically reduced to the tune of 30% of what they had. So they lost 70%. By just a few cables being cut, which, by the way, the party line story on that was that it was an anchor off of an unmarked Korean fishing vessel that had been dragging its anchor during a storm and somehow managed to cut all these cables through the Mediterranean, the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf. I don't think I've ever seen a ship that would drag an anchor that far and certainly not realize that any of the cables were cut. But that's the party line. Anyway, the fact is, it happened. So countries and continents are very much so single-threaded through buildings and fiber cables. I'm going to give you some definitions and distinctions and be mindful of time for my other panelists. Carrier hotel, meet me room, internet exchange, peering point, data center, and 3 flavors of co-location. A lot of these terms are used interchangeably, and they should not be. But they all sort of sit in the same bucket. So, there's some confusion about them. They all provide space, power, connectivity in varying degrees, but they perform different functions and deliver different value as a result in different aspects of networks. Excuse me, they're all subject to physical layer threats. Carrier hotels are buildings like 60 Hudson and One Wilshire. Meet me rooms are the room or area within the building where the carriers that are located and network operators located on various floors all come to as a common point for demarcation to be connected to the other networks. The purpose of going to the building in the first place for a network is to be connected to other networks. It's not like they're co-locating refrigerators full of, frozen drinks and meat or whatever. These are routers, these are switches, and the need is to be connected. So from an efficiency standpoint, a simplicity standpoint, an economic standpoint, they seek out these points, these floors, these suites in these buildings. So you're taking the world from a network perspective, and you're bringing it to a building, and then you're bringing it to a floor in a building, and you're bringing it to a suite on that floor. That's sort of a neural point. It's a major artery. An internet exchange is a layer 2 defined layer 2 switch, typically Ethernet, if not all Ethernet these days. They were ATM back in the day. Point where IP networks, obviously IP, Internet Protocol layer 3, use Internet exchanges layer 2 to establish VLANs and sessions between amongst each other to offload traffic. It's efficient routing. It's basically the underpinnings of the public Internet itself. Internet exchanges themselves, like NE2, for example, as a layer 2 Ethernet switch, are located in many cases in meet-me rooms and carrier hotels, but traditionally they weren't. Traditionally they were located in what's called peering points, which were very much so specifically geographically different and disparate from the legacy carrier hotels. Legacy carrier hotels are telco phenomenon for the most part, and more related, at least notionally related, to TDM and the PSTN, which has completely changed, and I really don't want to spend any time on that because it's just proven to be an evolution that has passed. Internet exchange points were in, like, Palo Alto, for example, here, you know, the PAX, or the SprintNap in Pennsauken. What's Pennsauken, New Jersey? Why? Those things have evolved and matured, and actually IP has found its way into the carrier hotels because the carrier hotels are where the fiber is. And where the fiber is where everything else ultimately goes. That's where the light goes. That's where the packets go. It's efficient routing. It's economics. Again, so you see IXs and very powerful, successful IXs now exist in meet-me rooms. Again, performing a different function, not physical layer. A data center, although data centers do exist in carrier hotels, typically they're out in the hinterlands, and they're more related to server-based needs, and servers would be just basically processing data, and they have high power requirements, and in some cases they have connectivity requirements, but nothing on the order of magnitude that meet-me rooms represent. Data centers are also sometimes analogous with hosting facilities, which is a vestige of the past from web hosting, but it's really application-based hosting. And those servers, processors, computing power are in data center buildings that are fed with, you know, tremendous amounts of power, and they're not exactly the building that's downtown in the center of town, i.e. the carrier hotel. There's also been a big convergence over the years in that as well. And then co-location, all three flavors. Basically, the word co-location means when you put equipment in proximity with other equipment. For network operators, you are co-locating it with other networks. Sometimes with 1L, sometimes with 2. The last one is a term that I've seen used mainly with people that put antennas on wireless towers. So you can co-locate an antenna on a tower. I'm explaining all this because you probably come across these terms in your daily lives. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but they're all out there. And the fact of the matter is, they're all vulnerabilities of different sorts. But a data center, although the data that's in a data center may be replicated, may not be, if you lost it, it would be very bad. Access to that data is driven by networks, i.e. fiber. And the real major interconnection points that are strategically important are the ones that house the greatest number of networks. And those are the ones that connect to data centers, that data centers are fed by them. So in the grand scheme of things, to lose a data center would be to lose what was in that data center. To lose a carrier hotel meet-me room is to render useless everything that comes to and from it. So those are sort of higher in the pecking order of strategic buildings that the government would be concerned about.